Welcome to the Smart Driving Cars podcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhauser. Hi, Alain.
Good morning, Fred.
Good morning. And on top in the latest Smart Driving Cars newsletter, no surprise, I think, the California Public Utilities Commission has given autonomous vehicle companies such as Cruise and Waymo the okay to operate around the clock and charge passengers for rides. I think all of our listeners and viewers should read your comments and then read the statement you submitted in writing to the PUC. But we're going to cover them here now, I think, to a great extent. Alain, this is certainly a big deal.
This is a big deal because it was close, and it was close. The vote was 3-1. I think 2-2 makes it fail. I don't think it passes a 2-2. It needed at least 3-1, and this is the California Public Utility Commission, and giving rides is a utility. It is a public service. It is, and so therefore, it's not just like selling lemonade or ice cream or coffee or even cars. It's not just a consumer item that people should necessarily go out and compete head to head on. It really is that if one can provide not necessarily a monopoly, but an organized effort to use public facilities to provide utility to a community, then it requires some oversight by an entity to make sure that everybody behaves in the public interest, because they're being given rights to provide this efficiently, as opposed to everybody trying to provide it themselves. That's why you can't have necessarily 100 electricity companies competing to give you electricity or natural gas or other services. It should be organized as a one. And so the public utility does have this public oversight to ensure that those that will be entrusted to give this service, in fact, sure, they're allowed to make a profit. They're allowed to operate without subsidy. It costs money to deliver services. They do have a right to charge for it, but to do it appropriately, and in the process of doing that, not endanger the population. So, they have a right to be there making the decision as to whether or not these entities can provide this opportunity to give rides to San Franciscans to help them improve their quality of life. That's really what rides are all about. One doesn't go someplace unless one thinks that by going there, they're going to be better off. Otherwise, they'd stay home. Sure, every once in a while we cruise down Main Street in our convertible or in our Lambo or whatever, and the rides, the enjoyment. But 99.9% of the time, we're just trying to get to someplace because we're going to be better off. We need to go to have a doctor see us. We need to go pick up something. We need to go learn something. We need to go enjoy something. And we need a ride. And so here the California Public Utility Commission was faced with, oh my goodness, here is this new gizmo out here that wants to give rides to our citizenry. And are they really going to give reasonable rides at reasonable prices and provide reasonable services, or are they going to create, oh my goodness, who knows what chaos? And so, yes, it's a tough question and a tough deliberation, and they've deliberated. And of course, I guess I'm really pleased personally. Hey, I don't live in San Francisco. I go there as rarely as possible. I'm happy for them. I think San Franciscans are going to be better off, have a better quality of life as a whole because of this. But that's my personal opinion.
Well, you listened in here, right, to a lot of what took place, and you said you were deeply moved by many of the comments.
Well, of course, I mean, I've tried to read. I've tried to, at least get a perspective. But the interesting thing is that I think I have a perspective, and so I wanted to share it with the commission. And given that they were actually giving you 1 minute to do it, I almost flew from, New Jersey to California to do it and fly back. But I guess the value to me of doing that, for which, what's the value to me? Just personal satisfaction and happiness, trying to do the right thing. I wasn't being paid to give an opinion. Probably some people might pay me to not give it. I don't know. I should have put it up for bid, but no, that's just kidding around. But my time and costs and so on that I would incur in doing it, guess what I decided to do? I decided not to go. Wasn't worth it. Cost of the rides would have been too much. But they did afford those of us who really couldn't make it there. I guess they wanted to hear from us. Thank you for allowing us. It was public comment, and they did take a broad definition of the public, not only San Franciscans, but anybody in the world. And you could call in. And the process they had was you called in and you registered, and I guess you got in line. So and I called in. I called in actually probably a half hour before the meeting started, and they put you on hold. They say, and ask you your name and put you in line, and I put my name in line, and so I was waiting to be called. I didn't know where. But of course, they should offer first dibs in providing public comment to those who actually, went to the commission hearing. Those of us who are coming in by phone, hey, getting them back the line, that's okay, of course. But then that gave me the opportunity to listen to essentially every one of the 1 minute comments, 1 minute, 15 seconds or so comments that everybody in the House was making and lined up and making. And they were moving. I mean, there are opinions, there are strong opinions on and good opinions on both sides of this. And it's not that those speaking didn't want things to be better for San Franciscans. They just thought that the balance of the whole thing, when one looked at the trade-off between opportunity and cost, some came out on that the cost was greater than the opportunity, and others came out that the opportunity that was greater than the cost. And so it was, it was close, and it is close. We're talking about the future. None of us know the future, and the future is tough to call. If any of us could call it, I guess it would be boring if we really could call it. Trust me, it's much better having it be uncertain. Thank you, God, for making it that way. Otherwise, life would be pretty boring.
So you listened in a variety of comments. There were people with disabilities. There were Uber, Lyft drivers who were concerned for their welfare going forward. And there were others who were proponents of this, talking about what it might be able to do for them.
Yeah, and some people who have experienced it said, "Hey, this is liberating. This allows me to do things that otherwise I wouldn't be allowed. I couldn't do. This is allowing me to get to some place where I don't have other ways to go or better ways to go." I mean, what's interesting about transportation in traveling is anytime we choose to travel, we pick the best, and only the best gets chosen at that time. There's only that one reality. There might be all sorts of other opportunities, but we choose the best. Sometimes we walk. Why? Hey, because walking's the best. Sometimes we take a plane instead of walking. It's been a long walk, you know. But there, so the interesting thing is, it only becomes relevant when it pops to the top of somebody's decision making. If it never pops to the top, then nobody's going to use it. It's going to sit out there and just whatever.
So these companies now, including Waymo and Cruise, have the ability to offer full-time service around the clock, pretty much as many vehicles as they want to roll out for this, it sounds like. And what is your advice to them? Not that they've asked for it necessarily, but what would you tell them about going forward, how they need to operate to make this successful?
Well, I think, I think what the request was appropriately was to be able to I'll call it, they haven't stated it this way, but to give rides to people, anybody, 24/7 in San Francisco. Now, I'm not sure what I should look it up as, excuse me for my ignorance. If the Chicago Transit Authority operates their elevated and trains 24/7, but I know the New York City subway system operates 24/7, and I don't believe any other system operates 24/7. I don't think Muni does. I don't think BART does. I don't think the buses in San Francisco does. As far as I know, the only entities that operate 24/7 are maybe Uber, Lyft, which is, somebody has to get out of bed to do it, and taxis. Somebody has to get out of bed to do that one too. And so that, all of a sudden having some entity out there who says, hey, some people need some rides also at night. I mean, when Cruise first started, they said they were going to give rides between midnight and 5 a.m. or whatever it was, overnight, whatever the hours was. Everybody, they're only operating when it's easy. They can't do it during the day. My goodness, they're operating when really nobody else is out there, and trying to fill a need. Not hey, maybe San Francisco doesn't want to become a 24-hour city, but every once in a while at night, some people need a ride. They can't give themselves a ride. And here, Cruise was saying, hey, pick us. We'll give you a ride. And so in a sense, to me, this is what they're asking for. And they were asking for, and they were asking to do it within an operational design domain. We'll use a technical term here, of basically all of San Francisco. San Francisco's is really just a square, 7 miles by 7 miles. So throughout the 49 square miles of San Francisco, anywhere you want to come from, anywhere you want to go. Now, I think it's fantastic that they want to go from anywhere to anywhere. I might suggest some different ways to operate so that people can more readily use them and more people can use them. And I think what I'd like to do is, I prepared, I got to say a minute summary of it during the session when my name was called from the phone lines. But I think I'd like to really go through what my 4-minute version was that I'd submitted in writing to the commission, because I think it sort of embodies kind of where I happen to stand for whatever. interest there is in that on this matter. So
Let's do that.
Let's do that. So my name is Alain Kornhauser. I'm professor of operations research and financial engineering at Princeton University and faculty chair of its Princeton autonomous vehicle engineering activities. The application of automation to improve mobility and quality of life in cities has been the hallmark of my career as a teacher and researcher, which started in January 1971. I'm about to start my 52nd year at Princeton. I speak today in support of the deployment of safe, affordable, equitable, sustainable, and high-quality mobility to improve the lives of all San Franciscans. Such mobility is not widely available today, neither in San Francisco nor anywhere else in the world. It can be delivered only through the deployment of vehicles that remove the high cost of the driver, which represents more than 50% of the cost of a ride, whether it is in a taxi or in a bus. Operation of driverless mobility has been demonstrated by Cruise and Waymo. They have shown that vehicles without drivers can deliver safe, demand-responsive rides 24/7, but thus far focused only on the technical solution and not the real value to society. Affordability is the real value proposition because the cost at scale for driverless mobility is really inexpensive, especially in comparison with the true cost of a driver to wait around to be summoned, then to get a customer, and finally to give that customer a ride. Ride sharing further cuts the cost in half, which I strongly recommend and that you endorse. This low cost of giving a ride can enable a fare structure that supports a profitable operation that is attractive to all but the very poorest residents, for whom free service could readily be afforded by philanthropy. We find that on a typical day, San Franciscans would like to take about 2.1 million person trips that originate and terminate in this 7x7, 49 square mile city. Each is longer than a 10-minute walk, half mile. The average length is 2.9 miles. The 90th percentile is at 5.4 miles, and the longest is 8.5 miles. We estimate that roughly 50% of these trips can and are taken by people who have the wherewithal to drive themselves. Of the other 50%, less than 10% take transit, taxi, Uber, Lyft, or limo. The rest get a ride from a family member or friend, or many don't go because they can't or can't afford a ride. The biggest societal reason for the CPUC to approve this service is the improved quality of life that driverless mobility services can deliver to those who can't afford a ride, can't get a ride from a family member, or who find themselves in the unenviable situation of having to ask for a ride from a neighbor or a stranger. We believe that a well-managed fleet serving these customers can achieve vehicle productivities of 100 person trips per day per vehicle, with average vehicle occupancies of 2.0, a total cost of under 85 cents per person trip mile, and a break-even fare without subsidy of $2.43 per person trip. That is really affordable. A fleet of 5,000 vehicles could readily serve 500,000 person trips, or 25% of the daily San Franciscan person trip market. And this excludes tours, which on top of that could continue to be served by Uber, Lyft, taxi, or in combination with this driverless service. With respect to impact on labor, by far the largest elimination of driving by humans is to the family and friends of those who gave most of the rides that would switch to this service. Those who now use taxi, Uber, Lyft, or limo can largely afford these services today and will likely continue to use those services in the future. Those customers who are conveniently served by public transit will continue to use public transit. there may not be any loss of existing jobs, while many new jobs are going to be created to maintain and oversee driverless vehicles that will enhance the quality of life of all members of the community, especially those who today do not have access to affordable, high-quality mobility. Most relieved are the family members and friends not giving many of the rides. Thank you.
Really, really well said. And I guess you could plug in many communities in the U.S. and around the world say the same thing.
Well, that's what we're finding, because the analysis that we've done for the 49 square miles of San Francisco really is similar to the analyses we've done for Trenton, Nashville, Jacksonville, Buffalo, you name it. And what one finds, what exists, is that, yes, people on average take, or would like to take, to have a reasonable life, because they'd like to be able to go to cello lesson, and they'd like to be able to go to a ball game, and they'd like to be able to go shoot hoops, and they'd like to be able to go to the store, and they'd like to be able to go to work, and they'd like to be able to go to school, and they'd like to be able to go visit friends, and so on and so forth. 3.5 person trips a day, other than just walking, the neighborhood. Okay. Those trips, the lifestyle that exists in the US, and really certainly much of the Western world, and I think much of the world is similar. Okay. And of those 3.5 person trips a day, and if you look at the cars in the United States and the number of cars out there, really it's about half of them are done by people who can drive themselves. The other half have to get a ride. They have to get a ride. Could be in a bus, could be in a taxi, could be in an Uber, could be in a Lyft, could be whatever. But how they get a ride? Many of them, family, mother, father, sister, brother, friends, neighbors. And if you can't do that, and you can't walk it, then where are you left? You probably don't go. And so what happens when you don't go is you haven't gotten the value out of going. I didn't get to go give my 1 minute in person because it was too expensive for me to do it. Would have liked to. If it had been really easy, I would have done it. That's 3,000 miles each way. Now you're in a city that's 7 by 7. Yes, you could have a 10-mile trip. Turns out in our database, longest one is 8.5 miles. I guess, I haven't really looked at it, but that's what it is. You look at the distribution. Each of the 2.1 million of them that we think, happen on a typical day in San Francisco. And that's why it comes out to be, the average trip length is less than 3 miles. Okay. And if you look at the operation they're talking about in San Francisco, it's only 7 by 7. Okay. So really the longest trip really could be just 10 miles. All right. That's what the nature of this problem is. We look at Trenton. Trenton is, 8 square miles. We include a little bit more on the edges. The initial move system, maximum trip length is 4.7 miles or something like that. Okay, it's what it is. Okay, to be able to now serve and provide easily. Now, we think, or what the MoveStone approach is instead of requiring a cell phone or requiring, call them up and come to me, it's kind of nice. But I think it provides more of a service if you go to a point that's not far away to be able to get the service, and that it being able to take you, and then you do the final pieces yourself. Why? Because that's going to allow some ride sharing. And that's where the ride sharing, the average vehicle occupancy of 2 comes in for San Francisco. Not that you have a whole, 53 people in a bus. Just get an average vehicle occupancy of 2. But by people sort of aggregating themselves to a location that's easy reach. But now if it's going to be location to location type of service, you don't need a cell phone. What do you need a cell phone for? What do you need an app for? What do you need any of that for? You want to go, you walk, it's on demand. You don't have to schedule it. Vehicle's waiting there. Or easily comes readily when you need it. Nothing. Again, I take the elevator analogy of this thing and put it, spatially in the 7x7. And if we, sort of the rule of thumb that we kind of use is a kiosk or whatever, hub, whatever you want to call it, bus stop, driverless vehicle stop, whatever you want, probably serves something like a quarter square mile. Why? Because, if it was in the center, every point is within a 5-minute walk, which might be, a nice, comfortable walk. That's the max. A lot of others are even closer. And so it's easy to get to. And it's just there. And my goodness, Uber, Cruise and Waymo are going to know you as a customer. Because the people that are going to end up using this are going to be people not one and dones. They're going to be people that use you maybe not every day, or maybe a couple of times a day. They're going to know you. Now, you might not, be a fan of face recognition, but they'll recognize you. You walk up to a kiosk, they're going to know, hey, Fred, hi, how you doing? Where'd you like to go today? And let's say you speak who knows what. They're going to be able to interpret that. You're going to say, in whatever language you're speaking, or whatever sign you want to give, and say, okay, get into vehicle, get into the gray one. I don't know, identifying characteristic of a vehicle. We'll be leaving in less than 5 minutes. Why might they want you to wait for 5 minutes? Well, somebody else might show up where you're going, so they share a ride. Oh, I can't share a ride with Fred. What's going to happen in there? Hey, they know what happens in there. They have data. They're going to, of course. And if you misbehave in there, what have signs said that in many restaurants or whatever or place? No shoes, no shirt, no service. I would think that Public Utilities Commission would allow them to put that on the window and be that terms of engagement. No shoes, no shirt, no service. You misbehave in this, maybe we'll let you do it once and then we'll put it, not twice. See ya. Okay. Why? Well, why do we have to treat people like this? Well, we unfortunately have to. If you look, the 40,000 that we kill every year on the highways, guess what? 90-some% of those are because people misbehave. And NHTSA hasn't gone out there and said, no more misbehavior. No more speeding. No more tailgating. No more drinking. No more using your cell phone. They could do that. Okay, they have it. California Public Utilities Commission, I think they could ask, and I think Waymo and Cruise might be very happy if they said, hey, you can do No shirt, no shoes, no service, or their equivalent. You misbehave in this. You ride in this in less than 5-star customer, maybe 4-star customer. Too bad. Go use something else. So, I mean, geez, the Standard has the San Francisco Standard this weekend. Oh my goodness, talk about clickbait. Talk about, terrible reporting. They said to the world, and I shouldn't even give them the benefit of report.
Well, they want to focus on misbehavior in the vehicles, what people are doing, and et
What people are
cetera.
doing. Guess what? Some
But
people have
before
misbehaved.
that, it was how the vehicles were misbehaving from their perspective, when encountering emergency vehicles and such.
Well,
But
yes,
Alan,
okay.
so
So they
the media has to do a job in covering the real issues, which you've gone into at length here and many, many times before. And you also point out in the newsletter that perhaps Cruise and Waymo and other companies, as they join in, need to do a better job of educating the public. And that's got to be a continuing process, not just, okay, we have the permission now from the CPUC, but we need to make sure that there's a welcoming environment going forward.
Yeah, I think no, I'll change that a little bit from what you said. I don't think it's Waymo and Cruise telling people, teaching people. I think they need to engage with their customers to really see what their customers would like to have. Work with them, listen to their customers, and make sure they do that. And that will get them the buy-in so that then together with their customers, they can put on, look, we're serving our customers. This is what any business or any good business does. Any good business really looks at not only trying to get the customers to see what they have to offer to be the best thing since sliced bread, but also to listen to their customers to make their offering look like the best thing since sliced bread. Okay, and I think it's that cooperation. Don't want Waymo and Cruise to be missionaries to, preach to engage in their gospel, but to look with the people that they're trying to serve and how best they can serve them. I think that's what they need to do. And to me, that was our whole concept with respect to the kiosks in Trenton and so on, was to get an engagement with the community as to what kind of service they would like to see, what would be attractive as a place for them to go to and come from, what is reflective of their quality of life desires. Okay, and so there's as much listening as there is talking. I know I have a real problem personally with that. I talk to them. Sorry, folks. I don't listen enough. But really, and if they do that, then this evolves. And then I think one sees one doesn't want to get service using your cell phone. Who come to me now? Why not just show up? Why not know that, hey, Fred, hi. Okay, yes, you have an account with us. Hey, I mean, you are a 5-star customer. What can we do for you today? Okay, how can we show respect to you? Okay, then maybe you'll show respect to them. But if you don't, you get one shot. Second time, boom. I guess. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be a truant officer. But in a sense, all the stuff that's in the Standard today or yesterday about all this stuff, tell us something that we didn't know.
Well,
People,
there will be many stories, Alan, about how people's lives have been changed for the better because
Absolutely.
of this, that
Well, I think
are very
so.
worthy of telling.
Look, what's motivated me and motivated us is, going down to the Trenton Soup Kitchen at 10:30 on a Monday morning, sitting there and listening to a recruiter from the Robbinsville Amazon facility trying to recruit people coming to the soup kitchen for lunch to come to work there. And people who really could use a 15 or 17 or $20 an hour job would change their lives. Okay. And why don't they take these jobs? Because they can't get there reliably. And Amazon might hire them, and all of a sudden, who knows when they're punching in. And you might say, well, Amazon should accommodate people who can't punch in on time and be reliable, and they should just use them and put up with it. Okay, yes, maybe, but they've got if they don't run a well-honed operation, they're going to fail. So they need people to show up on time. You don't show up on time, you have to fire them. And my goodness, why aren't they showing up on time? Well, oh my goodness, they've got to catch a 5:37 a.m. New Jersey Transit bus to the end of the line, and they catch a shuttle and so on. And if they miss that or whatever, and it takes them what would be a 12-minute trip would takes them an hour plus. I mean, it's like, are you kidding? And now guess what San Francisco is going to have the opportunity to do? Have anybody who lives within the 49 square miles who needs to go to a job within the 49 square miles is going to have, even if they did a kiosk type of situation, less than a 5-minute walk to, 5-minute walk from, ride to get between the places. That's what they're going to have available to them. That's essentially as good as the guy with his Lambo. Wow. And what's it going to cost? What do we say? 85 cents a person trip, or 85 cents a person mile on average. Or on average, if you charge a fare of whatever it was, $2.43 for the ones short as well as the long ones, $2.43. So basically, for $5 a day, they can get their mobility to go out and earn over 8 hours, 15 to $20 an hour. Geez, Amazon might even pick up the tab for that, which in fact is a real opportunity. Amazon should. Probably if Amazon picked up the tab of $2.43 a ride for each one of its workers, they could probably reduce the amount of parking spaces they have to provide for those people to come to work there. And probably if you went through the numbers, they might end up being ahead. I don't know. I'd have to go through the numbers, but it certainly wouldn't cost them much. And that's why in my testimony, I said, for those who really can't afford the $2.43, there must be a philanthropist in. How rich is San Francisco? There's got to be a philanthropist that says, hey, I'll pay for that. That's so cheap for somebody to have a high quality ride. I mean, if the San Francisco, if Mooney goes in there and looks at what the subsidy is per person trip on their system, I don't know what that number is. I'm sure somebody will write into me. I hope. Let me know. I'd like to know what the number is. I'll take an over under a 243, and I'll take the under. I mean, I'll take the. Wait, which one do I want to take? I'll bet it's not under. That's what I want to say.
This is like The Price is Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's like The Price is Right. I'm trying to. Yes, right. I bet it's greater than 243.
Meanwhile, Alan, threw this one in. The Arizona Republic reports that Cruise is expanding its coverage in the Phoenix area, creating a service area of 100 square miles, including portions of Chandler, Tempe, Scottsdale, and Phoenix. The rides now are open to testers who've registered, and they're free, but obviously the plans are to do this paid kind of service.
Well, the rides can't be free. I mean, come on.
This is just during testing. Right.
Well, fine. It's fine for testing, and it's fine free for testing. But look, if the price is free, guess what the value is? Zero. Okay.
Most
free
not a sustainable
goods.
business model.
It's
either.
not a sustainable. It's not going to be around. You can't. Okay, I'm gonna be able to get to work for the next 3 weeks during the demonstration. Then what do I do? Okay, so talk to me about then what do I do? And yes, it's nice to be able to go anywhere. Okay. But in fact, if you look at that area, people don't go from anywhere to anywhere. There are concentrations on those. And again, to me, the ride hailing model is not the right model. Okay. It is the right model for those who, who already have too much mobility opportunity. Okay. For those that don't, then it's just too cumbersome. I go into a tall building to use the elevator. It doesn't ask me to pull out my cell phone. It welcomes everybody who can show up. Plus, one of the real attributes of having a place for this is that at least Cruise is out there designing a vehicle, the Origin vehicle. It has a floor height. You could make the curb so that it matches it perfectly. So that the issue of wheelchair accessibility or accessibility by the visually impaired is like not trivial, but much easier. Out in the middle of the road, going out, dropping you off here, there, whatever, who knows where. Sure, one could do it. One can't do it well. And what one's looking to do is to do it really well, to do it in a situation in which you can have vehicle productivities that are 100-person trips per vehicle per day. Why does it need to be 100? Well, it doesn't need to be 100, but it needs to be a number like that. Because if the vehicle is going to cost something, and the vehicle is going to have to be depreciated only over a finite length of time, and if that operation has to have some capital cost associated with it, you've got to distribute it over a lot of trips. Otherwise, the cost doesn't get down to 85 cents per person mile, full of depreciation of assets and so on, cost of customer acquisition, cost of oversight maintenance, reporting to CPUC, holding of public meetings with everybody, keep everybody happy, and all the other things that you need to do. We think.
It's going to be fun to follow, and obviously we would welcome the opportunity to talk to both Cruise and Waymo as the services expand and come on and talk about how it's going with the benefits, etc.
Yeah, I think they're setting they're setting themselves up to be. Why be Uber Lyft? Uber Lyft has less than 1% of the person trips. That's not disruptive. What do you want to be, another 1%er? I don't think so. I think you want to be at least a 10%er, a 20%er, 30%er. 2.1 million person trips a day need a ride other than walking in San Francisco every day. And then plus the tourists. Okay, that's what I think. Okay, you want 1%? Go, sure. Be Uber Lyft. Great. You have the opportunity to be so much more. They don't like me, Fred. They don't like me.
Well, they should.
Well, whatever. I'm
You're
just
giving them
what
sage advice, Alan.
who am I? I'm just some academic and some whatever backwater entity. Who knows?
Moving along, a couple other quick headlines from Bloomberg. This headline: Everyone wants to work at UPS after Teamsters deal. Lots of people searching for UPS jobs after the new tentative agreement raises part-time wages to $21 an hour. Full-time drivers at the end of the 5-year contract will make around $170,000 a year in pay and benefits. They're going to be Amazon openings because Amazon people are going to be applying to UPS.
Geez, they're going to be Princeton University professors who say, "Oh my goodness! I mean, I want one of those jobs."
It's a pretty big deal, I suppose. But of
It
course,
is a big deal. I don't want to say they don't. They deserve it. I think they deserve it, but they're going to have to work for it. Okay. I am sure that UPS is going to say, of course, we're more than happy to pay you $170K a year, but you got to earn it. And so what they're going to do is they're going to look at the processes in which they deliver the value to their customers. And they're going to have to look at those, they will look at those processes and they'll say, okay, can we put a human and get $170,000 a year's value out of them? And where, geez, we should put automation because it's not going to cost us $170,000 a year for that automation. Guess what's going to happen? I can't imagine that they're going to go to a situation in which they have more drivers than they have now. Or they're going to have to change not their business model, but their operations model, the processes. And those change in processes are going to mean, hey, okay, you that earns 170, you do this work. This is really tough because we can't find the automation that can do this. Okay. But in any place where they can find the automation that can do this, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do that. That's the fiduciary responsibility to their stockholders. And their responsibility to their union members is to pay them $170,000 a year. Great. That's the new equilibrium. Okay. But that equilibrium, the operation at that equilibrium is likely to be different than the operation that exists today. Maybe not. But again, the over and under, or which way I might bet. I don't bet, luckily. If I bet, I wouldn't have anything. I have very little as it is. I would have nothing because I always lose. But anyway, you get where I'm going.
On the Tesla front, of course, there's a link to the latest from Rob Maurer and Tesla Daily. And you have lots to say about a report in Electric, which is headlined, "New damning footage shows several Tesla vehicles on autopilot crashing into police."
Yeah, it's because the Wall Street Journal put out a video showing all this stuff. And, and again, I think they're missing it. They're thinking that autopilot doesn't recognize flashing lights, and they should, maybe. But I've said this so many times, I must be wrong. Okay. But autopilot is an advanced driver assistance system that's supposed to help the driver make it more comfortable and convenient in driving a car. It's supposed to keep it in a lane, maybe change a lane. Great. And not drive into the rear of traffic moving ahead. I think And probably if one looks at it, it does that exceedingly well. Exceedingly well. Okay. But the key is its job is to not crash into things ahead of it that are moving. Things ahead of it that are moving are in a lane. Exceedingly large percentage of the time, those things are other vehicles, cars, bicycles, motorcycles, maybe even people moving in the lane ahead. Okay. And if they're moving in the lane ahead, that thing must be so close to 100% perfect. It'd be frightening. Okay. Absolutely working. Why? Because the sensing systems, whether they be vision, radar, LiDAR, can detect an entity ahead. And not only can it identify that as an entity ahead, it has a great opportunity of measuring how far ahead it is and what the relative velocity speed is of that entity is to the nose of autopilot. It does that almost perfectly. So that if the speed of the object relative to the nose ahead, okay, is zero, and the other thing that it knows essentially perfectly is how fast autopilot is moving. It has a speedometer. It's essentially perfect. Okay. It has GPS. It has all kinds of stuff. It's essentially perfect. It's moving at 27.62532 miles per hour. And if the relative speed between its nose and the vehicle, the thing that's just dead ahead is zero, guess what that vehicle is moving at? Whatever that number was that I said, 27 points out of whatever it was. It's moving. If the speed at which it's approaching this vehicle is now less than its speed, okay, then it means that this vehicle ahead is, getting farther and farther ahead. Man, don't have to worry about crashing into that sucker. It's moving away from me. If the speed at which it's approaching is now such that, I'm gaining on it, I better have to start watching out for it. Okay. I'm gaining on it. And that's where intelligent cruise control works really well. I don't know how many of the listeners have intelligent cruise control. You're on a highway following. Mine, works beautifully. Just keeps me in. It keeps me in, it's beautiful. Okay. If the approach velocity is equal or essentially equal to how fast I'm going, I think all these things say, whoa, how could that be? Oh my goodness. It's something that is stationary ahead. That can't be right. I'm on a roadway where vehicles move. There could be somebody heading towards me. I could be gaining on somebody. Somebody could be going faster than me. There's something dead stopped ahead. Can't be. I can pass under that or I can pass over it. Absolutely. Why? because essentially all these things that one sees when one's going down the road that are stationary ahead, guess what you can do? Pass over them or pass under them. Drive on the Pennsylvania Turnpike sometime. Oh my goodness, there must be an overpass, at least one overpass every mile on average. Guess what an overpass is? That's an object ahead that is stationary. Man, I can't start worrying about that and whether or not I brake. I came over the crest of a hill and all of a sudden I see this thing. Oh, of course, I mean, look, how many other cars went ahead of me? And they had to have passed under, otherwise they'd be pile up, a pile up, a pile up, a pile up, a pile up. So if I'm driving around bucolic Princeton with trees overhanging all the streets, guess what my system sees? Every one of those tree branches, guess what it is? It's a stationary object ahead of me. Well, some truck went under there and ripped off the leaves, 6 months ago. I can pass under that. If I'm on a roadway and the roadway curves and there's a guardrail on the side, guess what that guardrail looks like at the curb? Stationary object dead ahead of me. I'm going to turn before I get there. Forget about it. The pain on the road is going to have me turn. Forget about it. If all of a sudden I'm following a car and the car moves over and there's a stationary object ahead that appears, these systems aren't smart enough to say, oh my goodness, I may not be able to pass under that. Yipes. Doesn't matter whether it's flashing, splashing, bashing, whacking, who cares? Boom. Because autopilot is an advanced driver assistance system. It's not an automated emergency braking system. That's the job of the automated emergency braking system, to stop that thing. Unfortunately, none of these automated emergency braking systems really work. I mean, Consumer Reports has reported that, IIHS has reported that, and NHTSA, I mean, maybe sometime is going to say, hey, these systems got to work. They don't even work if you're traveling 12 miles an hour. They certainly didn't. Maybe they finally do. You're traveling 70, automated emergency braking is nothing. And NHTSA hasn't said, look, the ADS, the advanced driver assistance system, have to be closely coordinated with the automated emergency braking system. They haven't told them to do that. They've even let them do the exact opposite of that. How many times have we said on these projects, what happens in my advanced driver assistance system? I tap my brakes. And guess what? It interprets that as turning the darn thing off and saying, here, take this hot potato. It's all yours. I'm not going to help you anymore. It's on you. So that in case I didn't hit my brakes hard enough and I go slamming into the back of a flashing red lights, it's my fault for not then hitting the brakes. Even though it could have been in there and said, oh my goodness, I won't turn the brake off because, hey, look, Kornhauser, you're really a bad driver. I should continue to monitor and see if the brake should be turned on and help you stop so that you don't crash into that thing. It says, no, I'm off. I'm done. Not mine. Are you kidding? Me tapping my brakes signals to you that you shouldn't help me brake anymore? Me tapping my brakes tells you I don't want to accelerate anymore. It indicates that I'm still interested in decelerating, and if I'm not decelerating enough, please help me. That's what it says. And I'm tired of the Society of Automotive Engineering saying, oh, no, you tapped the brakes. You said, I want to do it. So, one of these guys who's drunk, guess not paying attention, which he's supposed to, guess what? He, I don't know if he tapped the brakes or not, but, he wasn't alert to, hey, I'm hitting the brakes. So now all of a sudden it's autopilot's fault. What? Are you kidding me? Look, these systems require everybody. Read the fine print. You can't misbehave in these things. If you're misbehaving, and darn it, each of these companies should now say to the NHTSA, hey, look, if our customers misbehave, we want to take the toys away. We're not going to let them have it, and we're going to keep the money. They shouldn't have misbehaved. We don't have to return it to them. We're tired of the misbehavior. We're tired of them having sex in the car. We're tired of them just, texting. We're tired of them, road raging. We're tired of them drinking. We're tired of them speeding. Okay? Everybody hates me, Fred. I don't know. How many times do we have to say this? Yet the Wall Street Journal has, oh, look, my goodness, how terrible. What bull. That person who is drunk in that car does not get, hey, dog ate my homework, relief from not being responsible. Okay? And his insurance company should say, hey, yo, not on us. Hey, you want to assume? Go after that person's wealth. Whatever. I don't know.
When you and maybe even your students look at before we wrap up here, look at this automatic emergency braking problem, where do we stand in terms of having the technology, the AI, or whatever you want to call it?
It's not AI. Don't call it AI. It doesn't take AI.
Well,
it doesn't take AI. Why do you wait?
Why can't the cameras? I called it AI because I'm wondering, the cameras need to interpret what they see, and if they're seeing, how can they not know the difference between an overpass and a truck across the highway ahead? Without you tell me, what's the solution?
Okay. So, hey, to be able to determine how big the hole is ahead, what the perpendicular distance is from the roadway to the bottom of the overpass is, okay, you have to be able to know where the front of the overpass is, which you know perfectly. You just don't know where to drop the perpendicular. Okay? Because that's a road. There's no marking on that. Now, maybe one could argue to the AASHTO or somebody that in fact at the beginning of every overpass there should be a line at a line, so that you could then determine how far the line is, which you can see, and where the front is, and then you can measure the perpendicular. Okay? But otherwise you can't. The optical illusion, and LiDAR can't do it either, I don't believe. Measure how big the hole is. And radar bounces under things and bounces back. So you've got to deal with that. So it is really hard, I think, to be able to determine whether or not you can. Otherwise, they would have, I think. Okay? So when Joshua Brown approached this tractor trailer stuck across the roadway, the radar in that system probably bounced underneath it and so on. I mean, it thought it, or it saw I can pass under that. No, it decapitated him. All right. And so assume we could do it for an overpass. Do you do this for every overhead sign? You put a line down there, we're going to have lines across all of our roadways. Do you do it for every, hanging traffic light? There are all kinds of junk that's in front of you that is stationary as you drive down the road. We know to disregard it. In fact, we assume we can pass underneath it. Although we probably begin to slow down a little bit and say, hey, maybe we're not going to hit that thing at 70 miles an hour. We're going to cool it a little bit. And the problem with automated emergency braking, the way I understand it, I probably don't understand well how it's implemented. It waits until 1.6 seconds time to collision. It is measuring at each incident 30 times a second what the time to collision is to the objects ahead. It's measuring that. But because it doesn't want to disrupt, it doesn't want to provide any discomfort to the driver. Oh my goodness, it doesn't want to slow down because it's approaching an overpass or a sign. It doesn't slow down.
How are companies like Cruise and Waymo in deploying their robotaxis? How are they dealing with some of these issues?
Well, I think the way they're dealing with it is they're saying, look, we're going to just drive on local streets and we're not going to go out there and do the freeways at 65, 70 miles an hour. Okay. And in fact, they probably, in San Francisco, if you want to serve the 2.1 million, you don't have to get on a freeway. You don't have to go above 45 miles an hour, probably. And if you're at that speed, then once you get close enough, then you can deal with it. Then you can start measuring it, and then it becomes obvious whether or not you can pass underneath it. The problem is when you're going 70 miles an hour or 80 or whatever, or the speed limit is whatever, and somebody put the darn thing to go at 90 and did that misbehavior, that's a whole different problem. And so, there have been some comparisons of, the Standard did a comparison of a Uber Lyft trip with a Waymo trip and said, oh, the Uber Lyft used the freeway and got there faster, and didn't, and whatever. I mean, it shouldn't be. That's Uber Lyft's problem. It doesn't have to go on the freeways and go, especially if one's doing a 50 by 50. Or on a 7x7 and 50 square miles. Longest trip is 8.5 miles.
So solving this issue with automatic emergency braking?
Well, but they all have automated emergency braking, and the automated emergency braking, as long as you start, if you start slowing down, then you actually never get to 1.6 seconds, the collision. And you get slow, but you just have to start slowing down a little bit earlier. Okay? But I don't know. I mean, somebody has to ask the car companies why they sit there and say, oh, yeah, we're going to wait until 1.6 seconds, and then we're going to tighten your seatbelt. We're going to close this. We're going to put the bolster down, make sure the engine doesn't come in, chop off your legs, and so on, and slam on the brakes.
But your point is you don't want to mitigate what happens when there's a crash. You want to prevent the crash.
I want to prevent the crash. And the best way to prevent the crash is slow down. Doesn't mean you have to be slow all the time, but start slowing down a little bit earlier. And coordinate it with the advanced driver assistance systems. These two things are separate. I don't think they talk to each other. It's crazy, I think.
Well, I guess we should tap the brakes here, Alan.
I think we should drop the brakes here. I think, again, congratulations to everybody in San Francisco, CPUC. You had a tough job. It's not easy. Thank you for your deliberation. I appreciate that personally, for whatever it's worth. I think you made the right choice. I think you're going to be happy you made it. And of course, Cruise and Waymo make sure that they do end up feeling they're happy to do it. Don't abuse it.
Terrific.
And of course, I'm sure you won't. Okay.
And we want to remind people they can find the full comments in the latest newsletter at smartdrivingcar.com. That's where you can find us. You can also find us on whatever podcast service you prefer: Spotify, TuneIn, Amazon, Apple, Google's, SoundCloud. You can get your smart speaker to play us too. You can find my tech reports at techstination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alain Kornhauser. Thanks for listening or watching. Please continue to stay safe.
Thank you.